Welcome to Build a Better Financial Future, the podcast for first-generation high earners who want to do more with their money. If you're ready to take control of your financial future, you're in the right place. Now, please join your host, Louis Rosa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Build a Better Financial Future podcast. My name is Louis Rosa, and I'm your host. I have a very special guest today with us today. Her name is Graciela Laurent, a published, award-winning, and professionally certified portrait photographer. She also weaves a tapestry of spirituality, healing, and visual artistry. As an intuitive Reiki Master, Graciela infuses her photography with a profound spiritual dimension, creating more than just images. She captures the essence of a person. As the co-founder of Body Soul Ministries, Graciela extends her passion for authenticity and freedom beyond photography. In the ministry, her role as Reiki Master, Cacao Ceremonialist, sound practitioner, and forest therapy guide takes center stage, providing a transformative and sacred space for individuals in their healing journey. We recently did an event for my clients with Graciela, which was amazing. So we're going to talk about all things vision board and how they apply to your personal finances. So welcome, Graciela.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. You know, it's such a pleasure to have my bio read. What a gift to remind myself of all the things that I do. No wonder I'm tired.
Yeah, and I'm sure that doesn't even cover, that doesn't even make a dent in it.
Well, you know, we are all multi-passionate professionals. So yes, sometimes these things happen. We do lots of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us about some of your background and how you ended up all the way from, getting all the way up to entrepreneurial journey. Like, how did you even arrive at photography and the ministry? How did that all come about?
Wow, what a great question. You know, I think like most people that actively pursue their passions, if they really dig deep, you see that you really loved it from day one. You know, I loved photography since I was in middle school. I would go around with, those little point and click cameras with the old school film, and I would run around my high school and the park and just take these like time life pictures. You know, I always wanted to be like a National Geographic photographer running around and taking pictures. And I always just found that photography really provides such a window. And now where I am now with my boudoir and my personal branding practice, I know that it's transformative. I know that it changes lives. So now the path from there to here, that's a different story. You know, I am the first generation born in this country. My parents are of Cuban origin, and then my grandparents and back from Spain and France. And so, you know, when I was 15 and I wanted to be a photographer, my parents were like, you are not allowed to be a starving artist. You got to get a degree. You got to save the money. You got to do the things. And so that's what I did. So I actually have my degree is English education. You know, I taught high school for a little bit. I was in the legal field for a bit. And then, like most people, someday in my mid-30s, I was like, wait a minute, what was I doing? You know? And that's when I remembered I had a passion. And of course, at that time, the internet had been invented. This is how old I am. Social media had been invented. You didn't need a brick and mortar. And so literally while I was sitting at my desk at my old job, I started my business, you know, and we're almost at 15 years now. So.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Well, I'm not going to leave you hanging out there. I, too, am from an era where the internet did not exist. There were no smartphones. So I remember those cameras you're talking about. You didn't know what the photo looked like until you got it developed, unless you were lucky enough to have one of those Polaroids, right? But other than that, you had to wait to develop the film. Yeah, I remember those days and get your doubles, right? You always wanted to share them with people. But, you know, they created some of the greatest memories because I actually still have physical photo albums from my youth. It's not the same as looking through your phone and trying to find a photo from like an event like it, to be able to physically hold that photo. It's amazing. So
it really is. And I will tell you, in terms of child development, there's really something to be said for kids being able to physically hold and see photographs and to have them up on the wall and have them up on the refrigerator. There is a huge movement within the photography community to push people to print their pictures. It doesn't have to be something really expensive. It doesn't have to be anything really fancy, but really find a way and print them, because you're absolutely right. You know, no one in the future is going to be like, hey, we're having a family reunion. Why doesn't somebody pop in that USB? We're not there yet, right? We're not there yet. So definitely print for sure.
Yeah, thank you for taking me back through memory lane. And I want to point something out that you mentioned, which really resonated with me. You talked about being a first generation, which this podcast is geared towards. A lot of our listeners are first generation. I like to call them first generation wealth creators.
Yes,
and
sir.
I remember what you said resonated with me because a lot of our parents, obviously well-meaning, they're, hey, you got to go to school, get an education, get a good job, right? But I feel like not a lot of parents, at least not that I know of in my circle, were ever pushing anyone to explore the possibility of following a passion in the sense of being an entrepreneur. It was always like, get an education, get a good job, right? And a lot of us, I think, probably started out our professional lives just based on that. You know, even creating a family and having kids, like it was just the way that you were supposed to do things, right? Go to school, go to college, graduate, get a job, get married, have kids, right? It was just like an automatic thing that everybody just does. But I like what you said because you were intentional about it. At some point, you were like, wait a minute, I have a passion. I remember.
Absolutely. And I do think there's time and place, right? When I was 15, my parents had only been in this country for, 20 years, 25 years. That's different than today when we have much more stability. My generation, we have millionaires at my level of generation, right? So we did it in one generation, and that's an amazing thing. What's really interesting is how little financial support there was, like just from the point of knowledge, right? Like we all knew how to make money. The rule was you just spend less than you make. That's it. That was the big financial lesson for us. And I remember, like so many people of my generation, that I would write the checks for my mom. I was the only one in the house that could spell 1,000 and 100. And, like we were talking the other day, money orders, my gosh, you'd have to go to the store and get the money order and do the thing. So I will say that even though the entrepreneurial option wasn't necessarily instilled in me, certainly, the backside of it, if you will, that part, like that part was solid. I literally think I've been using Quicken. Like now I use QuickBooks, obviously, but Quicken I started using when I was like 14.
Wow.
I've never had an actual like old school ledger. I've never done it like that.
Oh yeah, I've had those for sure. I remember, it's funny because I feel like there might be some people listening that don't even know what a money order is. They're like, money order? What are you talking about? So I remember, when my parents were here, they didn't even have a checking account. So, and there was no direct deposit. So every time they got paid, they got a physical check that they had to go get cash. And normally you went to a check cashing place. And that's where you did most of your transactions, either there or at the post office. You got your money order, so you got your check cash, and then you had to make money orders to pay your bills. So that's one for the electricity, one for the phone. It was insane. But I remember doing those. Like that was part of what I did was go to the check cashing place to get all these money orders, write the checks out, right?
And my parents' generation, they didn't trust ATM machines. Like they didn't trust credit cards. They didn't trust ATM machines. There might have been a little bit of wisdom in that, to be honest with you. But yeah, we've come a long way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you about vision boards. We recently did an event for my clients, which was great. I got a lot of great feedback. So for those that don't know, if you can just tell us, what is a vision board, first of all?
Sure. So I probably should finish the story of how I ended up at Body and Soul, because that's another one of my passions. So like, why would a photographer talk about vision boarding? And this is the tie-in. The truth is as I started putting together this imaginary future that I wanted to create for myself, I started really learning more about manifesting. And I know that some people might roll their eyes thinking like, oh, just because you imagine it doesn't make it real. Well, yeah, actually it does. It's different than wishful thinking. It's more of effortless action and how we can put all that together. So old school style, a vision board. What would people do? We did this when we were little. You would take a picture, cut out a picture from a catalog of what you wanted Santa to bring you, and then magically Santa would bring it to you. It's pretty much the same thing, but nowadays we create a masterclass out of it, because now we know it's not just wishful thinking. It's this effortless action that we can put into place. So yes, while a vision board is a visual representation of your goals and hopes and dreams, it is just step one into creating that life that you love. I always give the example of being hungry and ordering a pizza. You get a feeling in your body, you're hungry, you make a decision that you are going to have a pizza, you pick up the phone, 30 minutes later, magically a pizza appears. Was it effort? Was it hard work? No, it was effortless action, right? So just giving you that starting point, that catapult to say, okay, here's what I want. Now, how do I take these steps?
Yeah, and I appreciate you making that distinction because, yeah, you're right. A lot of people might think, oh, it's magical thinking, roll their eyes, like very woo-woo stuff. But as a financial planner, I'm still a big believer in vision boards because they are, like you said, a physical representation of your goals and dreams. And what better way than to go after your goals and dreams than to have them physically in front of you as often as you can, right? Like I look at my vision boards every day. I have the old school ones. And then recently with your event, I created one digitally on Canva as well. But it's so cool to see not only the goals, but also as time goes by, the things you've already accomplished. Because it's very easy to lose track of what you've accomplished. Because I feel like as human beings, it's just natural to keep moving the goalpost. And eventually you achieve something and all of a sudden it doesn't even feel as good anymore. And you're just trying to get something else, right? There were things that you have today that you prayed and wished for a long time ago that you're not even appreciating them as much as the feeling you had when you didn't have them, So I'm a big believer having your goals in front of you.
That's exactly right. And that's why I think such an important component of vision boarding is community. Having friends that point out to you, hey, you might be having a quote unquote bad month in your business, but remember when you didn't have a business? Remember when you were just sitting at your desk dreaming of a business, right? So these are all things that they're guideposts. They help keep us on track. They help us know where we want to go. We know from a scientific standpoint, anything measured will improve. Anyone that's ever attended a business course, a financial course, we know if you follow your dollars, if you follow your sales, if you measure your customer satisfaction, it will improve. Why do we not apply this to our own lives? Why are we not following what we're doing? I hate to burst the bubble, but you do have to do some deep inner work to figure out the why. How were we raised that we were always looking for the next thing, and it's nobody's fault. But if you think about it, you're in kindergarten, then they tell you, oh, here comes first grade. It's going to be a really big deal. And then you go to first grade and all of a sudden it's like, well, middle school is coming and that's a big deal. So you don't even get a chance to celebrate that you finished first grade and middle school and high school. And then high school doesn't count because now it's college, and then college doesn't count because then it's kids and marriage and the job and, all the things, right? So we have to learn to really take time to celebrate ourselves, to recognize where we are and sit in the joy and the gratitude of the accomplishment. It's not ego, it's not boastful, but, and pride doesn't always have to come before the fall. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything in moderation, the middle path. I think that's where the good stuff is.
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because I remember I found myself at a point where I realized that I was always placing my happiness on the completion of a future event. Always. And you're so right. I remember just, I was born in the Dominican Republic. At some point, my father came to the U.S. So then, he was working on bringing us to the U.S. So it took 4 years. So from 87 to 91. And that was like the big thing. Oh, looking forward to moving to the U.S. Then it was starting a new school, right? 6th grade, 7th grade. Oh, high school's right around the corner. Then college, then getting a real job, quote unquote. Right. And it was always something. Then came the certifications, like when I was studying to become a certified financial planner, and they just keep moving the goalpost. But I realized I was like, man, I'm not really taking any time here to celebrate anything. This reminded me, I remember when the Olympics happened, a lot of the number one the people that win all the gold, they get interviewed. And a lot of the times they get asked, what's next? And it's like, well, congratulations. How are you celebrating? Right. And I think it's important for us to do the same. Take time to appreciate those small wins to, definitely give yourself a pat on the back. And I like what you said about the middle road, because I think there's a way for you to prioritize yourself in both ways, right? Like enjoy some experiences today while also saving for tomorrow, because obviously we all want to retire and be healthy and have money then, but it doesn't have to come at it's such a sacrifice where you're just trying to save every dollar today and not even enjoying life.
Yeah, for sure. And if you think about it, there's this one, I love a good TikTok. I love TikTok University. There's always such good things in there. But it was something like, you are who your ancestors dreamed of being, right? Like the ease and flow I have in my life today, that's what my mom dreamed about when she was working as a cafeteria lady making, $3 an hour, right?
Oh,
she
powerful.
dreamed of the life that I have today. So and of course I want more for my children than what I have, right? That this is just the natural way of things, but let's sit in the joy of that, like let's let our parents be happy that we did the thing. It's not their fault. Think about how I always tell people, what would it take for you to have to leave the United States and leave a whole other country, and go to a place that you don't know the language and and your skills don't transfer, The first entrepreneur I ever knew was my uncle. And in Cuba, he was a very important person in his job. And he was, high up there. Everybody respected him and whatnot. When he got to this country, he didn't know the language. So guess what he had to do? Sweep floors, And so he swept floors until he learned, and then he got a skill, and then he took that skill and eventually developed a business. And then he ran this beautiful business that supported his family for 40 years, but they were in survival mode. Our generation, I hope if we're doing our job right, we're not in survival mode. So it is my duty to my ancestors to be happy and to enjoy it and to reach the next level and do the next thing that I want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's powerful. I've never thought about it that way. You're so right. Because a lot of us, I've experienced a little bit of what you're talking about in terms of leaving my country, right? And leaving all my friends behind and starting in a new place that I had to learn a new language, get new friends, all that. But it was definitely a lot harder for my parents that they lived an entire lifetime in the Dominican Republic to then leave everything behind to come to the US. And you're right. Skills are not transferable. Like two of my sisters experienced that, and I don't even know how they felt about that. I mean, I can only imagine. Now that I'm an adult, I will definitely ask them, because one of them was a lawyer in the Dominican Republic, and the other one was a dentist, like they full on, right? Like they went to law school, dental school. My sister had her own dental practice, and then to come to the US, like none of that counts. Right. To have to start from scratch. There were lots of doctors I knew that were driving cabs. Sometimes I would take a cab and I would talk to them, and they're like, yeah, I came from the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico, Cuba, and I was a doctor. And I was like, wow, that is just insane to me to leave so much behind. So when you put it like that, to say, hey, take time to enjoy it, and because you are living the dream that your ancestors came here for, like that, I mean, that carries so much power. I mean, thank you for that.
Absolutely. And how powerful that it only took one generation, right? Like if you think about it, that's pretty darn amazing. You know what I mean? When we were growing up, my mom was a single mom and she had 3 kids and we were all piled into a tiny little apartment. I mean, we had food stamps, you know what I mean? Like to this day, somewhere around here, I still have a little, it was old. It wasn't an EBT card like they do now. It was literally a little fake $1 bill, you know, and God bless this government for giving us that opportunity, because it's what we needed to get on our feet. Then perfect, you're done, fine, didn't need the program anymore, phenomenal, and we moved on. But, back to vision boarding, like our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents, they had a vision too. They just didn't cut it out and put it on a piece of paper. Do you know what I mean? Like this country was established off of a vision, right? So vision is absolutely important. It's taking those next steps that really make the big difference.
Yeah, for sure. How would you say that vision boarding helps someone shift their mindset around money, like especially if they've had a negative relationship with it?
Well, I think fear is a really big part of the money conversation. Fear, shame, guilt, things like that. I had a coach once that he had achieved all this success and he was really proud of himself and he wanted to purchase this really fancy car and he was feeling really guilty about it. Like, is it gluttonous of me to get into this car? And it took some undoing of some of these stories that we have been told about too much being too much. So I think vision boarding and just visualizing what you want helps make it something separate from you, right? Even though emotion is a big part of it, you're leaning into abundance. You're leaning into the creation of something as opposed to the fear of something. So for example, I am going to make $1 million this month, as opposed to what if I don't make $1 million this month? It's two totally different vibrations. It's two totally different energies that you're bringing into it. So even if you're having a really, really tough month, and believe me, in 15 years of entrepreneurship, I have had every type of month possible. When I focus on the fear of, I remember, like in the pandemic, the pandemic was a really pivotal year for my business. As soon as the pandemic hit, it was like broke city. Like, it was scary. I mean, as a photographer, we physically couldn't see people. You just, I didn't know if I was going to die. I didn't know if it was even allowed. So during that time, my operating point was, I'm desperate. How do I make the money? What do I do? What's going to happen if I can't pay my bills? Well, guess what? When I was showing up with that as my baseline, I didn't get any clients. I had nothing, Then I kind of came to, so to speak, realized, hey, wait a minute, my mindset's, my heart, my energy is not in the right place. And so I started envisioning a more abundant life. I started saying, I have $20,000. I have $20,000. I need $20,000 and $20,000 is going to come to me. And lo and behold, an SBA loan showed up at exactly this time. I always tell the story, like, I got an email from the SBA and I'm like, is this a scam? Like, why would they reach out to me? Well, apparently they were reaching out to all small business owners. I ended up taking this loan. It was like $20,000. And with that, in the middle of the pandemic, I was able to upgrade my website, upgrade my marketing, just put so much effort in. And guess what? In the middle of the pandemic, in 2020, I doubled my revenue, having only worked a portion of the year because I physically didn't work for months on end. And then the following year, it set me up to double my revenue again. So what was the catalyst to all of that? I'm going to say it was my abundance mindset. It was me saying, no, I'm not going to live in fear, because if you're living in fear, you're looking for the negative. You're looking for the bad thing, right? But when you live in abundance, you look outside and you just see the world in a whole new different way. And I'm not saying Pollyanna. I'm not silly. I'm not out there, spending all my money like it's all of, loads of fun, but abundance, an abundance mindset.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you get what you focus on. And sometimes we focus on the negative of what we don't want. So instead of saying, I want to have more money or whatever, you want to get as specific as possible, obviously. But I think a lot of us make the mistake of focusing on the negative. So I was going to ask you about that. Like, are there any common mistakes that people make when using vision boards? Any do's and don'ts that you would recommend for anyone that's a beginner?
Yeah. One of my favorites is to point out that what we're really all looking for is a feeling. So you might think that what you want is a specific boat or house or a certain dollar amount, that you want to earn a certain dollar amount. But if you really dig deep, what you're looking for is a feeling. We think, if I have this house, I will be happy. If I reach this level, I will feel fulfilled or secure. Security is a big issue around money, right? Like, that's a root chakra situation, where you're like, I don't want to be in fear anymore. So what you really want is freedom. And I think when you distill it down to the feeling, you realize that, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Like, but when I do some of my vision boarding and I say, I want a brand new car, I'm not writing down, I want to buy a brand new car. If somebody wants to give it to me, I will take it. Just like when I write down, I want $50,000. Sure, I'm happy to earn it because that's, that I'm a hard worker. Absolutely. But if I win the lottery, I will take it. So, expand how you visualize things, expand what you really want, and figure out what is it that you're really after. And if it's joy and freedom, I know plenty of people that don't have a dime and they're walking around happy and free. So, really dig deep and go with the feeling, and you'll end up with, with the thing, the thing that you think is the thing, which maybe it is the thing,
Yeah, you're so right. My business coach, Pam, she says people don't go to the gas station because they want gas. They go to the gas station because they want to go somewhere. And I think a lot of us, it's a lot of wisdom in there. And I think it relates to what you're saying, because you're looking for a feeling. And sometimes we don't know how we're going to arrive at that feeling. So be open to possibilities, because I've had things in my life that I would have never dreamt of that they would play out that way. I was thinking, I want to accomplish X, Y, Z, and then not knowing how exactly, or maybe I had an idea of how it was going to be, and then it comes out of left field, something that I just never thought of that might have been even better, right? So I think it's a great way for you to frame that, because it's not all about money either, right? We're looking for a certain feeling. Some people value experiences more than they do actual money, right? I work with a lot of clients who they really value travel, and they're not trying to drive the latest car or have the biggest house. It's trade-offs, but they're like, no, I'd rather take 4 trips a year than have this fancy car. I just need a car to go to and from, right? So it's a great point.
Yeah. And I think when you focus on the feeling, you expand the ways that you could achieve the same thing, right? So like you just mentioned travel, how many folks aren't vision boarding? I need to make X amount of dollars a year so that I can travel. But it's the millennium. We don't have to do that now. You could get a remote job that allows you to travel, or you can get a career that travel is built in as part of it. And guess
Be a
what?
digital nomad.
It's a business expense and it's free,
Yeah.
And to me, again, this goes back to community and why it's so important that we keep talking. You only know what you know. You know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know. And until you sit down and you talk to someone else, how many times, just this morning, I had a conversation with a friend of mine and somebody pointed out to her, why are you talking about X problem? Here's the answer. It's so simple. And she's like, why didn't I see that? I can't believe I didn't even think of that. So like, what is a huge barrier to you might be something very simple. One of your colleagues, Kat, she's my financial girl. I love her to death. Kat sees the world through a different lens than I do. And thank goodness, because I'm looking at it from this way. And she's like, well, if you just stand over here, you can see that it's X, Y, Z. And I'm like, oh, I needed you to tell me that. So I very much believe in community for that, for sure.
Yeah, that is such a great point. That's one of the things that I tell a lot of younger aspiring financial advisors that reach out to me. I tell them your network is your net worth. You want to put yourself in a place where you have that community, because like you said, so many people see things from a different lens. And also a lot of them have already accomplished what you're trying to do. So it's important to not have to reinvent the wheel or make mistakes yourself. If you can avoid them, like you said, it was an effortless action, right? So if I can have a conversation with someone that's already accomplished what I'm trying to do and they can give me a few tips on do's and don'ts, then why not, right? So I really appreciate that.
I always say, if it feels like you're doing it the hard way, you probably are. There really is no need to suffer in this life. There's a way around everything.
That is true. Work smarter, not harder, right? Yeah. I think that another thing that I've thought about a lot too is ultimately, in my case, like how to make money where you're not trading your time for that money all the time. Because a lot of us, that's the mindset, right? Get a job and then you're getting either a salary or an hourly wage. And, as an entrepreneur, there is no salary or hourly wage. It's based on how you build. But we can build wealth in so many different ways that it doesn't necessarily mean trading your time for money. So I wanted to ask you, going back to vision boards, is there a difference between having a digital one versus a physical one? Do they work just the same? Is one better than the other, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I think it boils down to what works for you. You know, there's so many different ways that people consume information. I always come up with these great marketing ideas for my business, and I pass them by my friends, and everybody's got a different opinion because everybody hears, learns, and is motivated differently. You know, I have my one friends that they want to read everything in excruciating detail, and then I have another friend who's like, I will read one sentence, that's it, I'm out, gotta go. Like, if you don't show me a pretty picture, I'm not having it, right? So the question goes back to you as the individual. What works for you? What motivates you? And sometimes that takes looking at yourself in a way that you're not accustomed to, because we've all been in school, we've all been trained to learn a particular way. And so we think like, oh gosh, I'm really not good at, I don't know, reading, for example. Like some people are auditory, some people are not visual. And so what works for you, you know? So figuring out who you are and how you really learn, like when you feel really good, that's the right answer, you know? That's what I think. Either way, definitely look at it, address it, experience it every single day. There really is a mild level of obsession that you have to reach those goals that you want. And we've all done this and we've all experienced this. This is not new. Everybody has done this throughout their whole life. It's just a matter of refocusing that on the things that you think are out of your reach, but they're really not.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, you know, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about should we be updating our vision boards regularly? And if so, like, what do we do with the stuff we've already accomplished? Because I remember another one of my coaches, Nancy Blakey, she had us have a physical folder together. Every time we got an email or a note or a card from a client that was, like somebody just thanking you for the work you've done for them, like, and just kind of putting them in that folder and just having that collection. And it really worked. You know, it was great to open that folder from time to time and just see all these people emailing me or sending me a Christmas card. Thank you so much for everything you do, right? So I was wondering if the same would apply to the things you've already accomplished. Like, should we keep track of, you know, like a separate vision board, like the completed one, or what should we do with that?
You know, I love that you shared that story, because when I was in the legal field, I don't even know what made me put it together. Probably my desperate desire to be organized, but I created something that I used to call the folder of honor. And I would have it in my filing cabinet with all my other stuff. But every time I would get a nice little note from somebody or a thank you note or whatnot, I would put it in that folder, you know? So yeah, that's I love that. Gosh, you just took me back on that one. The modern version of that is the other day in doing some marketing work, I was Googling myself, like just to see what's out there. And AI gave me this really beautiful, sweet, you know, compliment of who I am and how I show up. And so that's a really neat practice, is like, if you want to check, like if you want to really see what's out there, Google yourself and see what the summary is. You know, it pulls obviously like from your website and your Google reviews and things like that. And anyway, it was just a neat little exercise. But yeah, should you keep your vision boards? Absolutely. You know, we have one, we call her our star pupil. She printed her vision. She had her vision board printed on her birthday cake. Like, that's how dedicated she was. When everybody got around to wish her happiness and joy, everybody was focusing on her vision board and everybody was like in on it, right? So yeah, I think for sure, you know, keep it and refer back to it. And to answer your question of how often, there's no formula. All I will say is don't limit yourself. You know, you might think that something's going to take a year. Oh, it's going to take me a year to save $50,000. Don't limit yourself. Say that you're going to have $50,000 tomorrow. What if you win the lottery? Why would you push that away? So, you know, there's definitely stick with it for sure.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you for that. I have one last question, but before I let you go, can you tell us where can we find you if we want to learn more about your work, whether it's photography or in the ministry? Where do you live on the internets, you know, social media, website, anything you'd like to share? And I'll put a link in the show notes as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, in real life, I live in Murphy, North Carolina, and I have a footprint in South Florida as well. But out there in the digital world, GracielaLaurent.com is my photography website. You can find a lot of information there. And then also Body and Soul Ministries.love. There you can find everything having to do with the manifesting side. It's really an interesting part of my journey right now where these two things are coming together. All my passions are coming together in one way. And that's really very exciting. So yeah, absolutely. Join me, ask me all the questions. We are on every single platform possible. We also have a podcast. We've got retreats and everything you could possibly imagine. So
that's amazing. What's the name of your podcast?
It's Cacao Conversations, and you'll find it through Body and Soul Ministries, YouTube, Spotify, all the things.
Okay, I'll put a link to that as well. I love it. Thank you so much. Well, the final question for you is, imagine that you are in an elevator, a complete stranger hops in, they're going to ride this elevator with you for a few short floors. They don't know your name. They don't know all the beautiful resources you just shared, so they don't know how to find you. And they just ask you, what is something that you would like to share with me after this? It's I don't know your name, I don't know who you are, and I'll never be able to find any of your content out there. So anything that you would like to share with us, life advice, financial advice, anything that you've learned that you find it important enough to just share with a complete stranger as a nugget, if you would, free jewelry.
Wow, that's a great question. You want me to distill my life's mission into one sentence?
Your elevator pitch,
So my business elevator pitch is different, but one piece of advice that I would give to someone that I may never see again. I'm actually going to borrow from my podcast co-host Julietta Wenzel. I love how she says this. Anything that is not love is fear. So really dig deep into whatever it is that you're feeling, whatever it is that you want to experience in life. You are either getting closer to love, closer to happiness, or you're getting further away. And the only thing that's on the opposite of that is fear. Everything else is just related to being scared. So check yourself. What are you afraid of? And if it doesn't feel good in your body, turn around, find the path to love, because love is the answer. It really is.
I love it. Yeah, there is such a thing as a gut feeling. It is actually connected to the brain, right? So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, it's been lovely having you here. I really appreciate what you do. Thank you again for the beautiful event you put together with my clients and for sharing so much wisdom and part of your story here with us today. And I'll be sure to share everything that you've shared as far as the links to your social media and your podcast. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Build a Better Financial Future podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please remember to subscribe and share it with someone who could benefit. To learn more or connect with us, visit buildabetterfinancialfuture.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult with your own professionals before making any financial decisions.